And I believe Mo has just joined us.
I'm here.
Mo Anderson, we are so honored and blessed to be able to have you, for you to make time. I know how busy your schedule must be in these trying times, this journey that we're on, and to have you share your time with our market centers and our agents is just nothing short of amazing. So from the bottom of our heart, we just want to express gratitude to you and say thank you from our hearts.
Well, I'm honored to be here, and I'm so honored that you would even invite me, in spite of my bad lighting on Zoom.
Well, Mo, if I'm being honest, you add the light to the frame. You own that frame that you're in right now, that box, and the frame doesn't need any other lighting other than you.
And you know what? Yesterday I received the most unusual, beautiful gift. It was a whole bunch of little red roses. And I just can't tell you how touched I was. That happens to be my favorite flower, and red is my favorite color. So how did you think of doing that, Coach Rich?
So that was something that my leadership team, the team leaders, MCAs, all of our leadership team got together, and we wanted to do something very special for you because of what you've done, not just for today, for what you've done for our company, what you've done for our entire industry, and the leader that you are. So it was our mission to make your day, and I'm hoping that's just a small pinnacle of the joy that you shared in all our lives.
Well, you made my day, darling. I love that gift.
So Mo, so before we start, I'm just gonna ask everybody to mute themselves other than Mo. So I was just, before you came on, I was expressing, as you know, gratitude is such an important part of our lives. And there's so much to be grateful for today. A lot of people look at the things in life that they lack, and instead we choose to look at the things that we have, coming from abundance. And today we have time with you, Mo Anderson, which is unbelievable. I've got everybody with questions, taking notes. Second is right after this, to have Bold Pivot, to be a part of something so magnificent as Bold Pivot is crossing boundaries. We just went over 38,000 people. We're probably going to be over 40,000 people by today. And then my youngest daughter, my baby, is in labor right now. She's having a baby as we speak. And unfortunately,
oh my goodness. Are you going to shoot out of that room? And well, no, they won't let you.
They won't let me in the hospital. I am going to, afterwards, I will be going to a house to tend to her dogs. However, I can't see her or the baby other than on Facebook Live. That will have to do for the first 2 days. And I just can't help but welcome that bundle of joy once they get home.
Is that your first grandchild?
This will be my third. This will be my second grandchild in 14 days. My other daughter in New York, upstate New York, had a baby 2 weeks ago, which was my second grandchild. Today's is my third.
Oh.
Two in 14 days. So you can only imagine the joy that's in my heart.
Nothing like grandchildren. Don't you just love grandkids? I tell my kids, if I'd known how much fun it was to have grandkids, I'd have had them first.
That's right.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
right.
It's
so Mo, I'm just going to dive in with some questions that we have for you. I figured we can go about 35 minutes. I want to respect your time, and then we'll open it up to see if any of the agents, leadership, or anybody else that's joining us has some questions to ask. You can see we already have 141 people on. We have about 175 RSVP. So we may push around 200 people today. When they know that you were coming on, it was created a lot of energy and excitement, which we're excited to say. So the first question, and I just want to have a conversation with you, Mo, is what were some of the obstacles you had to overcome by being one of the first female CEOs in our industry back in the 1990s?
Well, the first obstacle I had was our own people didn't want me. I'll have to tell you a quick story. Althea Osborne,
Sure.
everybody knows who she is because she was our top profit sharing earner for for 100 years. She invited me to her home for dinner on January the 4th, the day that I moved to Austin, that Gary wanted me to come and help him build the company. And I just thought that was the loveliest gesture in the whole wide world for her to want me to come to dinner. I go to dinner. After dinner, she takes me back in her master bedroom suite where she had a lovely sitting area, and she proceeds to tell me that she is opposed to Gary selecting me to be the CEO. She feels he should have chosen someone more qualified and someone far more experienced than me. I'm telling you, Coach Rich, I just, I had to fight back the tears like you wouldn't believe. And she said, I just
Sure.
wanted to tell you face to face that I disagree with his choice, but I'm going to attempt to, support you. And I thought, yeah. And so I stood up, I looked at her, and I said, you know what? All I need to do is to prove you wrong. And I said, I'm going to go home right now and start doing that. And I left her home. I was gracious about it, got in my car, cried all the way home, got home and just, boo-hooed, because I had no idea that there were people who were actually regional directors that opposed the decision Gary had made. Well, to make a long story short, by June, I had won her over, and she became my biggest supporter. And I love it when she tells that story publicly. She says, I was just wrong about Mo. And so I had to deal with the angst that was occurring in our own company. And then the next thing that happened is I booted out the most popular regional director in the company at that time. And I caught him cheating, and I don't tolerate that. And so
That's right.
I just removed him and his market center, even though he was the regional director. I de-identified the market center. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to get hung by my toes and whipped with a wet noodle for doing that. And I was really concerned about that when I found that the people in the company really supported my tough decision, because it was a hard decision. Well, then I started going to what I call the big boy meetings, and they would see my name badge on my jacket. And when they saw the words Keller Williams Realty, they would literally turn around and walk away from me in the middle of a sentence, because they had been reading all of the articles that some of the majors had written, like Princeton, Yale, Harvard business schools, saying that this new model would not work. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a rough time at these big boy meetings, but I want to tell you something. Now I go to the big boy meetings and they cannot wait to talk to me. But I went through a lot of rejection in those early days because people so ridiculed the company. I want to tell you, when I turned the company over to Mark Willis, I said, darling, you're not having to build it during that tough stage of giving birth to the company. So, sweetheart, don't do anything to screw this up. And he just laughed because he had watched a lot of this rejection. And then the first year I was there, Gary was very, very ill. He had nearly worked himself to death trying to do it all by himself. And the doctors just insisted that he just kind of pull away a little bit. Well, he actually pulled away a whole lot because he was really sick. And then he got better by the end of the year, and then, came back with that fire in his belly and that great vision in his head. But I'm telling you, it was tough. And I worked from 6 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock the next morning. And of course, my kids were grown and gone. I was 57 when he asked me to move to Austin. And my husband could not come for the first year because he was finishing up a degree in pharmacy. And I tell Gary I have a trophy for those first 10 years. And then I show it to him. I don't know if you can see it, but it's right here. It's called a pacemaker. That's my trophy for those hard years.
Mo, was there ever a
Can I
time?
answer that question?
That was a beautiful answer. Was there ever a time that you ever thought about, did you ever second guess yourself when you ran into these obstacles?
Well, see, I knew his models would work. I knew that the profit share model would work because in the company we owned that we sold to Merrill Lynch, we had profit shared on 2 levels. We certainly didn't have the models developed like he did. I knew that the ALC model worked because in the company I sold to Merrill Lynch, it had an ALC. I just didn't call it that.
Right.
And then when I saw his economic model, I just nearly fainted from shock because I saw how recession-proof it could be. And I went crazy over the models. So when the whole world was, I'm the fastest recruit in the history of the company. And when the whole world told me it wouldn't work, I knew deep inside there wasn't any question the models would work.
And to this day, they're working beautifully.
Happy.
Yeah, this is absolutely great. So Mo, how do you become a leader? Because leadership training is so important today, and we're all leaders. You don't need a leader in the name of a title. We learn, we develop. I didn't learn leadership.
Titles are silly and restrictive.
They're overrated. Yeah. So I didn't learn about leadership till I came to Keller Williams back in 2008. I've been with the company for 12 years. I've learned more in 12 years than any time. So the question is, how do you become a leader that others want to follow?
Well, I think there are a lot of answers to that question, and I'm only going to touch on 2 or 3. But number 1, to be a leader, you have to care about people. See, one of the greatest joys in my life is watching other people that maybe I've had a teeny little bit of influence and watching them grow and develop. That brings me almost as much joy as giving away money to people who need it. I think the second thing you have to have are standards and values. You have to have high standards, because if you don't have a high standard, there's nothing for people to work up to. They really love to be challenged, except a lot of our team leaders are scared to death to challenge them because they're afraid it'll make our top agents mad and they'll leave. When
That's
in
right.
reality, leaders love to be challenged. So if deep down in your heart you don't like to be challenged, well, you're probably not going to end up in leadership. And then of course, having values to the point you'll draw a line in the sand. I think all of you know about the time I drew a line in the sand about, the owner in our company who had sent pornography.
Mhm.
I just looked at him when he arrived, and he had no idea what he was coming for. um, and Mark Willis took him into his office, showed him the pornography that he had sent from his computer, and we had proof from our tech people he had actually sent it. Now, I have a value and I have a standard that you're not going to be using our servers for sending pornography. That's just not going to happen. And if it does, you're out of here. So
Right.
when they brought him into my office to face me, I just simply looked at him and I just said, you know what, we're not a match. And you have two choices. You can either sell this company to someone that Mark would approve, or you can, we'll go fight this out in court. And the choice is yours. I don't care which you choose. And then he looks at me and he says, Mo, you're a Christian and you have to forgive me. And I said, well, I probably would if I heard a sincere apology. So he proceeded to give me a sincere apology. And I looked at him and I said, now I forgive you. Now you have two choices. You can either sell your office to someone Mark would approve, or we can go fight this out. You see, forgiving someone has nothing to do with you compromising your standards. Your standards are your standards. Your values are your values. And I have, a strong value system when it comes to pornography, real strong. Well, to make a long story short, he chose to sell his company. Mark approved the buyer, and it was one of our, an owner, within our company. The issue is this market center was one of the most profitable market centers in that section of the country. Did I care? No, because I had a standard. Some people would have crumbled and succumbed to the guy because they didn't want to lose that profit. Well, I happen to know the good Lord would bless me for doing the right thing. Are you with me? Do you get
Absolutely.
it? Of course you do.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to think that's why God has brought us to Keller Williams and to you. And hopefully we are that blessing, as you are to us, Mo, because it's just been a wonderful journey for all of us.
So you have to, let me finish answering
Sure.
the question. You have to care about people. You have to have high standards. And then you have to live your life like a role model. Because when you emerge into leadership, people watch you all the time. I do things that people think are kind of silly. I do not drink alcohol in public. At home, I might have a glass of wine every now and then. But I know that we have alcoholics in our company. And I don't want to do anything that might influence them to fall off the wagon. I don't want to do anything that might make them think, well, it's okay, Mo does it, Mo has a glass of wine or whatever. And I probably have 6 glasses of wine a year, because I just am not a drinker. But I'm very conscious of what I do in public, because I want people to respect me and to follow me. They may not like me, they may not agree with me, but I want them to respect me. So I believe living your life as a role model includes lots of things, like, you know, picking up a paper towel off the floor in the men's room or the ladies' room, or it's going to the coffee bar in your market center and washing a few cups of, you know, dirty cups of coffee. It's loading the dishwasher. You don't, I mean, a leader doesn't have time to do that all the time, but they can do it enough to let everybody understand that we're a team. We're not a CEO and a bunch of agents or a bunch of staff. We're all a team, and I'm not too good to do anything. That's where that title really creates a problem.
That's right. That's right. And I think when we think about it this way, Mo, whether we realize it or not, every one of us is a goodwill ambassador for Keller Williams
Right.
International. We all, whether we're in the airport, which I'm familiar with your story in the airport, or we're in a restaurant, we need to be, when we're in public, we are on best behavior. We're all goodwill ambassadors. So,
and when they mess up somewhere, maybe in the grocery line, or they mess up in a restaurant, they get your order wrong or whatever, you know, that's the period to be gracious. That's the period to be forgiving. And I'm a great tipper because, you know, growing up, I didn't have any money. And now that I have made more money than I need, I love to give it away to people who work in the restaurant industry, because those kids really work hard. And I will never forget, in a restaurant in Austin, I had some Keller Williams people there, and I had kind of gotten to know that waiter a little bit, and I gave him a really big tip. It was hundreds of dollars. And you know, the meal wasn't that expensive. And the manager followed me out of the restaurant and says, ma'am, you've made a mistake. And I said, no, I haven't made a mistake. Maybe you've made a mistake, because it's time for him to pay his tuition. And I gave him a large tip, hoping that would help him pay his tuition. Well, the people who were with me saw this whole event, and I know that was being a good role model for them. When you have more than you need, and you know somebody's working their way through college and they have no help, you know, do that big thing.
I love that, Mo. That's a great story. So here we go. Question 3. How do you push past the fear to seize opportunities that otherwise might scare you?
Well, creativity flourishes in the absence of fear. Creativity is just fabulous in the absence of fear. And I want you to know that we've learned in Quantum Leap how to get rid of fear. I used a scripture verse to get rid of fear, and I'm sure the other holy books have verses in them that will help you get rid of fear. But I say this little verse that I was made to memorize when I was little bitty, and it stayed with me. Here I am going to be 83 next Tuesday, I think is my birthday, 2 days before Red Day. And I've used that verse all these years, and it says, God has not given us a spirit of fear. He's given us a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. Well, sound mind has everything to do with mindset. And in Gary's Quantum Leap, they took it out of the book when they rewrote it, and I'm going to make them put it back in. But I want to give everybody on the call the 4 truths of mindset. Truth number 1, when you change your mind, your circumstances change. And there's a Michigan agent during the pandemic who had a lot of fear. He was fearful that he would lose his buyers. He was fearful that he would lose his sellers. Just fear, fear, fear. And he got rid of it. I don't know how he got rid of it, but I just say that Bible verse over and over and over and over until I believe I have, power, love, and a sound mind. And then he changed his mind. He said, I think I can get listings in this pandemic. And he set a goal for 10. He got 11 that week, and it was all from calling his sphere of influence. And then he hadn't had to walk into any house he listed because it was all done virtually. Now, see, he changed his mind and it changed his circumstances. The second truth is when you believe something to be true, when you believe something to be true, it stimulates your adrenaline and it stimulates your senses, and you end up doing the stuff you ought to be doing to help it come true. An example of that for me was when in the late 80s, we lost all of our money because oil, we have grown up in the oil patch, and OPEC put the price of oil at $8 a barrel. And so the economy crashed just like it has during this pandemic. And we lost all the money we had saved. We lost all of our investments. And here we were about 54 years old having to start over. And so when this happened, I would say to my friends, you know what, we're going to build back and be bigger and better than before. And they would look at me like I was a stupid, idiotic woman that's sort of crazy, and they would roll their eyes. And the first 1,000 times I said it, I didn't even believe it myself. But on the 1,500th time, so to speak, I really began to believe it. And I said to Richard one morning, you know what? We're going to build back bigger than ever before. And I really believe it's going to happen. 2 weeks later, from the day I said that to him, Gary Keller, I'd never heard of him, never heard of Keller Williams, called me 2 weeks later. And you see, because I was free of the fear finally, I could see the opportunity, because when there's opportunity in every single adversity, especially this one, the pandemic. But if you're filled with fear, you will not see it because it blinds you, it freezes you, you're paralyzed. You can't function when you're full of fear. 2 weeks after I said that, now I can truly say that losing our money in the late 80s was the greatest thing that ever happened to us. And I can go back now and I can connect the dots where I can see, what happened that made Gary hear about me, and what happened that made him call me. That lucky guy. He's so lucky he called me. Wow.
It's one of those things I believe you both were just so grateful and so meant at that point in your lives for your paths to cross. So that was a blessing for everyone and for us, because we probably wouldn't be here.
That's right. You wouldn't be. And it's the opportunity in the adversity.
Absolutely, Mo. So we've got a lot of people who are either on teams or growing teams or looking to start teams, and they want to know, what are the 3 most important traits? I think you've spoken about 2 of them already, but what are the 3 most important traits that you look for when you're hiring talent?
I look for integrity, values, and fire in the belly, which means past success. And of course, we all know the importance of integrity. I can remember when I was CEO, I needed to find a regional director. And I had taken him through the recruit select process, just up through the interview, the preliminary interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I thought, you know what, he is so impressive and he was so wonderful. I think I'm gonna cheat and sort of skip the deep background check. And then, you know, my conscience said, well, Mo, so you're the CEO and you're gonna cheat the process? That doesn't sound too good. And I thought, okay, Lord, I won't cheat. And here I'd had this big interview with him. I liked him, he liked me. Man, he could talk pretty, he looked pretty, he spoke pretty. I mean, he was awesome. And I went ahead and did the deep background check, and I went 3 levels deep, and I ended up with 3 judges. You know, where you say, who else do you know that knows this person?
Yes.
And every one of these judges said, you need to send your legal person to courthouse XYZ, have them look at case number 1, 2, 3, and then make your decision. You all, I found out he was a total con artist.
Wow.
Total. I mean, he was the crook, but he was so impressive. I had to get on that phone and say to him, we're not a match. Well, he said, I'm going to sue you. And I said, well, you've just proved to me that I am right. We are not a match. So look at the trouble I caused myself because I didn't follow the model. And the model says you do the big comprehensive interview after you do the deep background check. So integrity is critical. And then you always have to match up the values. For example, when we look at a brand new team member on a mega agent team, or a team leader's recruiting somebody new, you have to show them the Y4C2Ts and talk about God, family, and business to see if they are like-minded. Because all in the world, the Y4C2Ts is a magnet to draw like-minded people. And when like-minded people buy into your vision or your purpose of your team, I'm telling you, you march forward with power you can't believe. And it doesn't mean we're all the same religion. It doesn't mean we're all the same in our thinking. It doesn't mean we're all the same nationality. Heck no, we're different. But we all believe that your faith, whatever it is, and your family are so important that you're willing to put your business second. And then, of course, past successes. Studies have been done that if people have not had past success, you know, and fire in their belly to succeed, you aren't going to change them.
That's right.
Now, the Lord, if he came back and he taught him, maybe he could change him, but there are some I don't even think he could change. Well, I'm kidding, kind of.
So that's
But you get my point.
Yes.
And boy, you've got to look. I tell team leaders, quit taking people just because they breathe and fog a mirror. I'm so sick of that I could die, because you've got to find people with a track record of success. Well, what about a mama, a mother who's been great raising her kids and helping her husband? Listen, the greatest success you can have in life is being a parent, a successful parent. But I want you to look outside of that. Did that mother, was she president of the PTA? Did she organize a Girl Scout group? Did she take leadership in her synagogue or her church or whatever? That's what you're looking for. You're not looking for what happens in the home. You're looking for what initiative she has. What's her drive and her initiative? Or for a man, the same thing. What's his initiative? He may be the best father in the whole world, but what's his initiative? Did he create or did he organize the Boy Scouts for his son? Do you get my point?
Sure, absolutely.
I don't care how well you know people, you find out, hey, tell me, what have you done since high school or college that you just are so proud of? And don't be modest. I want to know. And if they sit there and can't tell you diddly squat, for heaven's sakes, don't take them to your team leader, or don't take them to the mega agent. Waste the mega agent's time because he or she's trying to find the right person to be the admin or whatever you're looking for.
Sure.
Find a track record of success. If they don't have a track record of success, the study I read done by Texas A&M said they had a 90% chance of failure. That's pretty big, folks.
Mo, I love that you spoke about integrity, and I think that people sometimes get confused because integrity isn't doing the right thing when people are looking. Integrity is doing the right thing when nobody is looking.
Amen to that.
Could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's just like me cheating on the ABA, or that's what we had at the time.
Right.
On the process or the model. I quickly had that conscience kick in and say, no, you can't do that. You're the role model of the company. And if you're going to cheat, then you can't expect your people not to cheat. But it's doing the right thing when nobody's looking. That's the best test of all. And we all are tempted to cheat. I'm tempted to cheat all the time on food because I love ice cream and I love cookies and all the stuff I shouldn't eat. So when nobody's looking, occasionally I'll sneak a cookie out of the cookie jar. Well, we all do that, or at least if you're honest, you do. You'll say you do. But I've learned that developing the discipline when you're by yourself and nobody's looking helps you be terribly disciplined when you're actually around other people, or you have your agents with you, or you have your team with you. Because, man, they're watching. People watch you that you don't even know because you have a buyer and a seller saying something wonderful about you. And then you go to the airport and you're mad because the flight has been canceled and you yell at the girl behind the desk. I guarantee you there'll be somebody there that knows you, but you don't know them.
That's right.
It happens every time.
That's right. So, Mo, we're going to move on. The next question is, what are the non-negotiables when building culture within a team or a market center?
Well, it's really whatever the team leader in the ALC set. And I hope the non-negotiables are the list of things on the little sheet, culture in action. We used to call it, what is culture? Because it just lists the 54 things that are examples of culture in action. And I hope that the Market Center or the Mega Agent team will adopt that, because we had a large group of people put that together. And when you adopt that, then you begin to hold each other accountable. And we're all going to make mistakes, and we're never perfect, but it's something we can strive for. And I just love that what is culture piece. So
Absolutely.
that it's whatever standards the team leader in the ALC set for that group of people. You don't, for example, if they say ALC members go to mega camp and family reunion, hey, you don't violate it. And if you have to, for family reasons or whatever, then you excuse yourself from the ALC, and then the team leader might choose you next year, because the team leader interviews and chooses people from the top 20% every single year. You only serve a one-year term. You may be reselected.
Right.
You might be reselected for 10 years, who knows? But there is an end to your term, and you abide by whatever those standards are. You know, like on our covenant agreements.
Right.
Don't
And that goes
violate
back to
them.
standards.
They're standards.
That's right. So, Mo, I'm getting questions. One of the things is you said about the 4 truths, and you gave us 2.
Oh, I forgot the other 2.
3 and
I
4.
love the other 2. They're my favorite.
Go ahead.
Number three. Thanks so much, Rich,
You're
for getting me back on track, because, you know, I talk too much.
Never.
Number 3 is when the alligators are nipping at your feet, the hardest thing in the world is to have a positive mindset. The hardest thing in the world is to have a positive mindset. But you gotta have it. Now, these alligators, one of them may be saying to you, you're not gonna have enough money to get through the pandemic. Another one may be saying to you, nipping at your toes and saying to you, you know, I am so sick of being cooped up in this house. I just wish my spouse would go to the post office for 3 hours just to give me some space. You know, maybe you have one of those nipping at your feet. Whatever the alligator is, the hardest thing to do is have a positive mindset. Now, most of you have gone to Bold, and most of you have learned that silly little exercise. If you act enthusiastic, you will be enthusiastic. A lot of team leaders tell me, Mo, I just think it's the dumbest thing I've ever said or did, but I did it because the instructor told me you wanted that in bold. Well, I want to tell you the story behind that little saying. And the story behind is this. When I married Richard, we will have been married 63 years in August. But when I married him, shortly after we were married, he began to suffer from horrible depression. Maybe he didn't like who he's married. No, I'm kidding.
I don't think that was it, Mo.
But it was really bad. and we were young. We had 2 children, after 2 or 3 years. Our first child was born a year and 2 days after we were married, and the next one was born 3 years later. And I was 5 years into this depression. And we only had 1 car, and he drove it to work. He could barely work. When he came home from work, he could barely function. And if you've never had depression yourself, or you've never lived with anybody with depression, you can't begin to know how tough depression really, really is. I would walk to school, and I'd leave my house, and I'd cry all the way every day because I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to help him. I didn't know how to handle everything. I had to pay the bills. I had to do everything because he couldn't. I was worried about him. I was worried about the kids not, having kind of an active dad. It was hard. Remember, in every adversity, there's an opportunity. Well, I would walk within 1 block of the school. I'd get the Kleenex out, clean my face up, and my hand would hit the handle of the door, and I would start acting enthusiastic. Was I enthusiastic on the inside? No, I was about as enthusiastic as a dead slug. But I kept acting that way. I did that every day that I went to school, and sometimes I would act throughout the whole day. It took all the energy I had to be able to act like I was okay, when I was hurting on the inside so bad I could almost die. One day, at the end of 5 years, I went in my classroom. I got there at 7:30. That's when I always got to school. I got there at 7:30, walked in, looked at the clock on the back of the room. It said 10 a.m. And I realized I really was enthusiastic. I could feel the adrenaline flowing. I could feel the energy in my body. I was excited about what I was doing with my students. And it hit me that when you act enthusiastic, you will be enthusiastic. Now, that really came from a Dale Carnegie course. That's where I learned about it. And I thought it was stupid until that morning. And I realized I had acted long enough that it became a reality. And now, let's see, I'm on number what? Number 3,
4.
the alligators.
The alligators.
The alligators. And the hardest thing to do is have a positive mindset. And there's really only 2 ways to do it. One is to repeat an affirmation, like when we lost everything, I said, we're going to build back again bigger than ever before. And number 2 is to act a certain way, and you will soon feel that in your being. And so when all these team leaders do that little exercise, and they think it's stupid and dumb and ridiculous, but they do it kind of for fun, they don't understand that it's really true. It's really true. I know. I've experienced it time and time again. Now, the fourth truth is, your mind is just a part of you, like your hair is a part of you, your nose is a part of you, your feet's a part of you, etc., etc. Your mind is just a part of you, and it should be your servant, not your master. It should be your servant, not your master. When this COVID thing hit, I allowed fear to enter my mind, and I was scared out of my boots for 4 solid days. And that's really unusual for me because I can usually kick fear real fast. but I just couldn't seem to kick it. Now, let me tell you what my fear was. I have ownership in 3 market centers. I own a region, and I am Gary's partner. I own a nice percentage of Keller Williams Realty International. I own that. I have the stock. And I began to have fear that maybe I hadn't saved up enough money to get me through supporting 3 market centers, boosting a region, and having to make a cash call or 2 or 3 to international. And folks, let me tell you what, when you own part of an international company, your cash calls are in the millions. They're not in the thousands. Do you get my point? I was gripped with fear. I'd done a good job saving, but I was scared I might not have enough. And finally, on the 5th day, I said, mind, I slapped my head even, and I said, mind, you are to be my servant, not my master, and you've been ruling me for 4 days, and I'm sick of it. I get to choose what stays up here. You don't. And so on the 5th day, I begin to affirm that I'm sure I have enough money to get me through supporting those, you know, the market centers, the region, and international. And if I don't, the good Lord will somehow show me how to get it. And I calmed down and behaved myself, and I was in control of what was up here. But for 4 days, I was driven by fear, driven by fear. Isn't that stupid when you know better?
Oh, I believe that everybody on this call is either has experienced that at some point, or maybe right now, maybe with exactly, because the comments that are coming in, they're totally relating to that, you know, that everybody experiences fear, and how you dealt with it is how their role model is what they should be doing. You are their role model, and you're giving them guidance on that.
Morgan Eden, is that, did I say that right? I love it. She says, I've been with the company for 2 weeks and it's already changed her life. Isn't that awesome? Oh, the remarks are just awesome.
Yep. So for the sake of time, I'm going to skip. I want to ask you one last question and then see if we could take a couple of questions from the audience. So this is a burning desire. Jim Hand is one of our team leaders. He and I are chocoholics. So the question is, milk chocolate or dark chocolate? What's your preference, Mo?
Darling, it is milk chocolate. I'm one of the bad ones. I'm one of the really bad ones. I don't like the healthy one. I like the evil one. The one
You're going to have chocolate go all the way. I love that. So I'm going to open it up right now. If somebody has a question they would like to address to Mo, you can either unmute yourself and speak, or just type it in the chat box. I've got that open right now.
Ivan, it's been so much fun. You're on my screen. It's been so much fun to watch you. You just inspired me just watching you. And there's that little sweet Kate.
We've got a question from Ivan. Deb, what is it?
I've got actually a question from Katie Spires.
Katie.
What made you stand out that caught Gary Keller's attention to choose to have a conversation with you about joining the company?
So what made you stand out from Gary Keller's perspective that he made a choice to invite you down to sit down and entertain a conversation, and then which eventually led to the hiring of you?
He heard about me. That's what happened. He heard about how successful I was because the real estate company I had built that I ended up selling to Merrill Lynch Realty. When I was Century 21, my little office in Edmond, Oklahoma, which was a population at that time of 75,000, was number 3 out of 7,500 offices in the United States and Canada. And he heard about me. I had actually visited a Keller Williams office in the early days, and the team leader had an extended conversation with me, and she's the one who called him and said, "You have got to meet this crazy woman." So he started calling me. He called me probably 3 and 4 times a week, and he really didn't tell me hardly anything about Keller Williams. He finally flew up here and met with me, and then about 3 months into him building a relationship with me, he asked if I would fly to Austin to go to a meeting. Now, remember, I'm broke. Remember, we lost everything. And when he said, "Mo, will you come?" in my head was, I don't have enough money to buy an airplane ticket. I don't even have enough money to buy gasoline to drive to Austin. But out of my mouth came, "You bet, I will be there." And I hung up the phone and thought, I've got myself in a pickle. I don't know how I'm going to get there. Went to the post office, or not the post office, but the mailbox that afternoon. And in the mail was a credit card that somebody had sent me, to activate. They didn't know yet I was broke. I activated that sucker. I bought me a plane ticket. I paid for my hotel. I paid for my food with that credit card that I probably shouldn't have had. My mother would have spanked me had she been alive. And I went to Austin, and I shudder to think what would have happened if I hadn't gone. And I was as broke as a church mouse. Just broke.
Absolutely.
And that's when I saw the models. That's when I called my husband and said, "Are you sitting down?" And he knows what that means. It means the crazy woman's going to do something crazy. And I said, "Gary Keller doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to open Oklahoma as a region. I plan to tell him in the morning." So he walks in the next morning, and I say, "Gary, I want to open Oklahoma as a region." He said, "Mo, I don't even have a document. I can't let you open." I said, "Oklahoma's not a registration state. All you need to do is give me written permission to use your models and systems. We'll do the document later." Stuck out my hand. He finally said yes and shook it. And I said, my daddy taught me a handshake was more precious than a contract. He and I went to business together on a handshake.
Amazing. So we've got one last question, Mo.
He saw my fire. He saw my energy.
Fire in the belly.
Fire in the belly. And when he asked me in the interview, what had I done after college and after high school and college that I was proud of, I said, "Gary, how much time do you have?"
So our last question comes from Lawrence Bolito, who says, "Did you ever imagine when you first joined Keller Williams back in the 90s that you would have such a vast impact on so many people?"
No, and I still question whether or not I really have an impact. I think a lot of times people just kind of are sweet to me because I'm old as dirt. And, they know my latter years have been the best years of my life. I just loved my 70s and I loved my 80s, even though I'm having some health issues, which kind of happens when you get in your 80s, but I'll work through it, and then I'll be back and be the Energizer Bunny again. But he just saw how determined I am, and he knew I had this incredible work ethic because, see, I grew up on a tenant farm, and the work never stops on a farm, especially a tenant farm.
Sure. Well, Mo, I just want to make one announcement and then we're going to wrap up. So guys, Bold is starting in 5 minutes. If you've registered, congratulations for investing in yourself. If you have not registered for Bold Pivot, take this time and take this inspiration to get yourself registered for Bold Pivot and invest in not only yourself, your family, and your future, in all the company and all the buyers and sellers or customers that desire to invest in your business also, guys. So with that being said, Mo, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We know that your birthday is coming up next week, and I don't know anybody I'd rather sing happy birthday to. So guys, if we can all take ourselves off of mute and sing happy birthday to Mo, I would really appreciate that. Everybody now, let's do this. Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to Mo.
Happy birthday to you.
They'll know American Idol, though, but I'll tell you what, that was from the bottom of our hearts, and that was as genuine as we could make it.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mo.
You
Thank you,
all are
Mo.
you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mo. Love you.
Thank you, Mo.
Love you.
Give me a hug. And here's a kiss. I love you all. Now love on your
Thank you, Lori. Bye.
Thank you, Mo.
getting